The box came up easily. The dirt had softened after the rain. Rebecca Marsh set it on the classroom table and cut the tape with a key. Inside, rolled drawings, a few photographs, a manila envelope sealed with too much tape, a plastic bag with faded candy wrappers left by some optimistic 12-year-old who believed they would survive a decade underground. She lifted everything out one piece at a time, setting it in piles for sorting. The capsule was supposed to be a gift to the future, a record of who they had been in 6th grade, in the spring of 2015. At the bottom of the box, face down, was a folded piece of notebook paper. No envelope, no label. She unfolded it and read it. Then she sat very still. Rebecca had been teaching at Millbrook Middle School for 16 years. The time capsule was a tradition she had inherited from the teacher before her. Every graduating 6th grade class filled a box, sealed it, and buried it in the northwest corner of the schoolyard beneath a clay marker. The idea was simple. When the students turned 23, someone would dig it up, and they would have a record of who they had been. The class of 2015 had been energetic, occasionally difficult, and in a few cases genuinely memorable. Rebecca no longer recalled all of them by name, but she remembered the shape of that year. The spring had been warm and strange, arriving too quickly and lingering past its welcome. In mid-May, about 3 weeks before the last day of school, a woman named Carol Means had disappeared from a house on Oak Street, 6 blocks north of the school. She was 43 years old, divorced, working as a dental hygienist. She had a 9-year-old daughter named Petra. The police investigated. There were no signs of a struggle inside the house. Carol had a documented history of depression, had some unpaid bills, had mentioned to a friend the previous fall that she had been thinking about moving somewhere quieter. The lead detective concluded within a few months that she had left on her own. The case was classified as a voluntary departure. It went cold before the end of the year. Petra Means grew up without an answer. She was 9 when her mother disappeared. She was 20 when Rebecca Marsh found the note. The note said this: "I saw Mr. Harmon go into Carol's house the night she disappeared. He came out alone. He saw me watching from across the street. I was too scared to tell anyone. I'm sorry, A.L." Rebecca read it 3 times. Then she set it face down on the table and did not move for a while. There had been a Kenneth Harmon in the neighborhood. She remembered the name, though not closely. A father in the community, a youth baseball coach, a man whose presence had always been unremarkable, built over years into the kind of familiarity that stops registering. His son had been in school around that time. After the investigation closed, Harmon's name had never appeared in any public account of the Means case. As far as anyone had ever reported, he was simply a neighbor, as invisible as the rest. He still lived in the area. She had seen him once at a hardware store the summer before last, loading lumber into his truck. She went back through her old class rosters that afternoon, looking for the initials. There had been one student with those initials, Avery Leanville, a quiet girl who sat in the second row and liked to draw. She had written an essay that year about wanting to become an architect. She was not the kind of student who stood out through disruption or brilliance. She was careful, attentive, and she noticed things. Rebecca remembered that now. She had always noticed things. Finding Avery took 2 days. A former colleague passed along a contact, and from there Rebecca found a professional listing, a paralegal at a civil litigation firm in a city about 3 hours east. There was a small photograph on the firm's website, a young woman in her mid-20s, close-cropped hair, an expression that was composed but watchful. Rebecca recognized something in it, the way you sometimes recognize a child in an adult's face when you knew them young enough. She wrote a brief email. She said she had found something in the time capsule from Avery's 6th grade class that she believed belonged to Avery, and that she would like to speak with her privately if Avery was willing. Avery called that same night. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. The first thing she said was, "You found it." She had wondered many times over 11 years whether the paper would survive. Whether the box would rot or flood, or be dug up early by a maintenance crew who would throw it away without looking inside. She had thought about going back to retrieve it herself. She admitted she had driven past the school twice, parked on the street, and driven away both times without getting out of the car. Each time she told herself the same thing: leave it, let it stay there until someone else decides what to do with it. Rebecca asked her to tell her what she had seen. Avery had been 12 years old and walking home from a friend's house on a Tuesday evening in May. The evening was warm, still light at 7 o'clock. She knew Carol means the way children know the adults on a familiar block, not intimately, but reliably. Carol grew tomatoes in raised beds along her front walk and offered them freely to anyone who passed. She had given them to Avery more than once. That evening, Avery paused on the sidewalk across from Carol's house because she recognized the car parked in front of it. A blue sedan with a distinctive dent in the rear passenger door. It belonged to Kenneth Harmon. She knew it from the many times his son Daniel had been dropped off at school. She watched his father walk up the front steps and go inside. She stopped to pet a dog tied to a porch further down the block. A large, patient retriever she had befriended over the course of that school year. She stayed longer than she meant to, the way children do when something slow and warm holds them in place. When she looked back, she guessed 20 minutes had passed. Harmon came out of the house. He was moving quickly, not running, but with a purposeful speed that looked wrong from a distance. He had something tucked under one arm. He opened the trunk of the car without looking up, placed the object inside, and closed it. And then he turned and his eyes went directly to her. She was standing on a public sidewalk with her hand resting on a dog's back, and a grown man was looking at her with an expression she spent years trying to name precisely. It was not anger. It was not panic. It was something measured and cold, the look of someone making a calculation about what she might do with what she had seen. He got into the car and drove away. Avery walked home. She said nothing to her parents. By morning, Carol was gone. In the weeks that followed, she waited for someone to ask her if she had seen anything unusual. The investigation, such as it was, focused on Carol's known contacts, on her mental health history, on the possibility that she had simply chosen to go. The detective knocked on doors along Oak Street. Avery did not live on Oak Street. She had been passing through. No one came for her. She was 12 years old, and she constructed reasons around what she had seen until they felt nearly solid. Harmon might have been picking something up for a neighbor. The object in the trunk could have been gardening equipment he had borrowed. She had been across the street in fading light. She told herself these things for years. They were never completely convincing, but she had gotten good at not asking them to be. She became a paralegal, she said, because she wanted to understand what made evidence matter and what made it disappear. Whether that was connected to what she had seen on Oak Street in 2015, she left unfinished. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe some things just find their shape in the life that follows them. She had never spoken these words to another person. Until now. Rebecca called a detective the following morning. She had met him briefly at a school event several years before, a methodical, quiet man named Calderon who had since moved to the county's cold case division. She drove to the county office that afternoon and handed him the note in a plastic sleeve. He read it, set it down on the desk, and asked if the person who wrote it was alive and reachable. Avery drove in that weekend. On a Saturday afternoon, in a room at the county sheriff's office, she gave a formal statement for the first time in 11 years. The first time she had spoken those words aloud to someone with the authority to act on them. She was composed throughout. She described what she had seen in the same careful, measured way she appeared to have been preparing for years. The car, the dent on the rear door, the speed with which Harmon moved, the object he carried, the exact expression on his face when he looked at her. She named the dog she had been petting, the family who owned it, and the approximate time based on what she had learned about that evening afterward. The case was formally reopened the following week. Investigators focused on a property Harmon had sold in 2017, a lake cabin 40 miles north of Millbrook. What they found in the crawl space beneath the structure was not the entirety of what they were looking for, but it was enough. A braided bracelet, a pale blue scarf. Both items were brought before Petra Means, who sat in an office at the county sheriff's building and looked at photographs of them for a long time before she said yes, those were her mother's. She recognized the bracelet from a birthday photograph. She recognized the scarf because she had given it to her mother herself, the Christmas before she disappeared. Kenneth Harmon was arrested on a Thursday morning, 11 years and 3 weeks after Carol Means was last seen alive. The time capsule's other contents were sorted and distributed over the following weeks. Most of the former students collected their items with minimal ceremony, drawings, photographs, letters they had written to themselves at the age of 23. A few had forgotten entirely that the capsule existed. They asked what had taken so long. None of them knew what else had been inside. Rebecca kept the box itself. It sat in the corner of her classroom for a while, empty and slightly warped from years underground. She wasn't sure what she felt when she looked at it. Eventually she moved it to the supply closet, where it sat on a shelf between stacks of construction paper and a box of broken markers, unremarkable and out of the way. Avery did not return to Millbrook to pick anything up. She said she hadn't put anything official in the capsule, only the note, and the note had done what she had needed it to do. Rebecca asked her once, carefully, whether she ever wished she had spoken sooner. Avery was quiet for a moment. "I was 12, she said. I didn't know yet if the world would listen." Petra Means was 20 years old when the arrest was made. For 11 years, the record had given her a particular kind of story. Not a crime, not a death, not a question with a living answer on the other side. A voluntary departure, a door closed from the inside, a woman who had chosen to leave her daughter behind. What she had now was different. It was not comfort in the way people mean that word, and it was not resolution of the kind that closes something cleanly. It was a fact, something that had happened, in a real place, on a real evening in May, witnessed by a 12-year-old girl standing on a sidewalk with her hand on a dog's back. And now the world held it. In the northwest corner of the schoolyard, the clay marker was still there, slightly sunken from years of weather. A small rectangle of pale earth where nothing grew.